Hello everybody, welcome to my very first pre-recorded video release. My name's Commander Cosmic Drifter and I want to talk about Elite Dangerous. But before I start, I have to say some of the positive things about Elite Dangerous. I've really enjoyed the introduction of fleet carriers. I think it's added a fantastic new dynamic to the game. I've used fleet carriers since they came out, been involved in supporting two for friends have played the game, and I obviously own one of my own. The scenes you're seeing now is the last little bit of codex discoveries I did carrying this current location, because the time had come to move it to a new location, and I was just finalising the area and preparing myself for one of the necessary evils of carrier work, and that being mining. This time I wasn't mining for fuel specifically. I was going to mine some pyrite in a hotspot that I found while I was in the system. Took a little bit of an unexpected turn why I've recorded it and having this video. But I don't want this to be a complaint about mining in general. Mining's been a great source of cash for pretty much every player in the game. I would like it to highlight a problem that exists, and I'm not sure if it's something Frontier Development are fully aware of. Maybe something they're really struggling to fix. I think it's something they do need to fix, because it is fundamentally an issue in the game. This was a really nice system I went into. More notable stellar phenomenon outside the location of the carrier, as I was doing a little bit of an exploration route. But with views like that, you can see why you can get engrossed in the game and spend a lot of time exploring. The Fleet Carrier Update patch was released on the 9th of June. This was after a fairly intensive alpha and beta testing phase. A lot of credit needs to go to Frontier for just not releasing it, but giving a fair crack at the work of testing it. The alpha and beta phases did get feedback from the players, and the game came out. Fleet carriers were costing a lot of credits, 5 billion of them, so not everybody could afford one, but they did introduce the massive ships we could use as a mobile base. Also included in that patch was the comment below. Little bit about mining, nothing really major. At the time, prior to the release, the mining that was farmed was low temperature diamonds. They were returning the most credits. And the game came out, and everybody kinda got on with it. The feedback received from the carriers' alpha and beta tests really just focused on the cost side of the carriers. The initial outlay, the upkeep, and the price for installing the services. At no point that I can remember reading or in my experience playing the betas and alphas did Tritium fueling the carriers or anything to do with mining seem to be an issue. If anything, the fact we needed to mine for Tritium, I think a lot of people seen as a positive. Tritium was located and Icy Rings the same place that Low Temperature Diamonds was. So I think a lot of people like myself thought, whilst we're getting fuel, we can also be earning credits for Low Temperature Diamonds. Prior to the release of the carriers, people had been farming in a system called Boran, a triple hotspot for low temperature diamonds. When the patch was released, the introduction of Tritium changed a lot of the parameters for the procedural generation of the game, and Boran's mining layout and hotspots were altered. It didn't take too long for the community to find an alternative place to go, which was a triple hotspot for low temperature diamonds. So when that was found, people were beginning to suspect that what had happened prior to the release of the carriers would be continued and low temperature diamonds would be the thing to mine. Of course, none of us realised that Frontier had a different plan. Unbeknown to any of the player base, and something that they didn't try during the alpha and beta checks, Frontier were never happy with the operation of the overlapping hotspots with the same commodity. So this patch was an attempt to sort that and basically reduce the effectiveness of low temperature diamonds by around 25%, as it says in the text, and also making the overlapping hotspots not as effective. I did mention in this though that the change here was not going to affect any other hotspots or minerals. This patch was released about 6 days after the Fleet Carrier's release, and it effectively broke low temperature diamond mining. Quite a lot of people were not very happy about it, as you can imagine. Of much more significance was the fact that a game alteration had occurred without being through the alpha and beta process. That created a lot of unforeseen circumstances in the future game, which really shouldn't have happened. Quite how deeply these fundamental problems lie, really quite difficult to determine. However, the footage behind the captions I'm putting up isn't the game then, it's actually the game now. And I think the problem that's happening here, in this footage, primarily has been caused by the changes to mining. Not just this specific one that I've mentioned there, but the subsequent ones that are come into being to try and sort it. So the underlying mining problem still existed, and then Frontier released another patch on the last day of June. Now this one sorted a problem that I had experienced firsthand, and that was when a carrier jumped in and ended up right in the middle of a system in the barycenter between two binary stars. It was an absolute nightmare to navigate. The mining fixes in this patch were a response to, at best bugs, at worst exploits being used to respawn surface and subsurface deposits and asteroids. The fix didn't work, but it did have the unfortunate side effects of completely nerfing subsurface and surface mining as well. So we had this problem, and also still had the problem from the previous patch. With all these patches are happening, there's obviously going to be a response. In atypical fashion, when low temperature diamonds became unprofitable, the player base sought something else to mine, and that solution came, at least for a short time, in void opals. Subsurface mining was profitable again, so everybody rejigged their mining builds and off they went and hunt for void opals. I can't quite remember the timing after the carrier's release, but low temperature diamonds was nerfed on the 17th of June, and I believe void opals was nerfed on the 30th of June. This coincided with patch 1 and with patch 2. So from the 30th of June up until patch 3 was released, mining was completely destroyed in the game. Nothing was really working very well. This had a further consequence which we'll speak about later on. But obviously there was another patch coming, and this one everybody hoped would address the issue. Patch 3 arrived on Wednesday the 15th of July. With it came an admission that the previous two patches hadn't fully worked. No one was surprised, everybody knew how bad mining was. This patch fixed subsurface deposits respawning in asteroids via fighter exploit. I have never heard of anybody saying that's ever worked again. The other thing that was done was the hotspots from patch 1 were looked at again and radically changed. This, I believe, is the current status of the games, and this change was effectively done to reduce each hotspot's overlaps to make them less profitable but still better than the single hotspots, but also to increase the yield of single hotspots to make them better to mine out in places like the back. Has this worked? I would say no, based on experiences I've had in the game in the last little while. Patch 3 we hoped sorted the game, but prior to patch 3 being released, there were serious consequences at everything that happened before. Patches 1 and 2 effectively killed mining, and with it, it also killed the ability for fleet carriers, owners, to mine Tritium. There was huge problems with carriers being stranded. Lots of people would spread carriers far and wide over the galaxy to find themselves stuck because there was no Tritium to be had anywhere. Frontier's solution to this at the time was basically to give free Tritium into players' carriers hold. They filled up the fuel tanks, 1,000 tons, and sent them on their way. At that time, that gave them 2,000 light years to jump, which they could do that in a couple of days. For as much as it got them moving again, there was no way it was going to be a full solution. Can't remember how many weeks this was done, but it was quite a few. And it got people possibly 6,000 light years who were ever stuck. But patch 3 was hopefully going to be the solution to this. Did it work? No. There was one other problem, and that problem was Colonia. A lot of people were based out in Colonia. A lot of people had bought carriers out in Colonia, and unfortunately there wasn't a valid fuel supply within that region of space. There was dribs and drabs of fuel in Colonia, but there was nowhere near the quantities needed to fuel a carrier up for a mission to even get back to the bubble. So this was another problem. Patch 3 was meant to fix all of these problems, and it didn't. And there was two subsequent things that happened following patch 3. Patch 4 was meant to come out at the end of July, but didn't get released until the 3rd of August. With this, there was further changes to mining. Once again, alterations to diminishing returns and overlapping hotspots, and there was also still the subsurface deposits problems, this time after an asteroid had been laser mined, trying to crack open surface deposits wouldn't work. But by and large, some of the changes to patch 3 were still in place. The other issues related to this patch are more alarming. Due to the amount of carriers that had been abandoned potentially, probably, crashes and instability were starting to appear in the game. There was an absolute overload of carriers in some systems, The limit on them wasn't working, so these were trying to be fixed in this patch. Whether they've worked is open to debate, because if you look at the systems now, you can still see numerous carriers that don't seem to be following that logic of a 16 slots from a body. I genuinely believe that Frontier think that patch 4 had sorted the problems. Nothing could be further from the truth. Talk about it later. Patch 4 did do one good thing though, and that was it made Tritium twice as potent. They effectively doubled the range of the carrier because you'd use half as much Tritium in your jumps. Now this was great to people who had Tritium. I was fortunate, I did. I was one of the few, I think, that was fortunate. But to people in Colonia where they couldn't get it, people out in the black where they couldn't mine it, really wasn't a solution for them at all. Like I say, I genuinely think that Frontier think the problem has been resolved, but it hasn't. Since patch 4, I don't recollect any further mentions of carrier mining. I think Frontier think that patch 4's fixed the problem. There was one subsequent patch though, and that was relevant to Tritium's efficiency. And this was a good thing, because it effectively doubled the range of the carriers. But it only worked for people who had fuel. Anybody who couldn't mine it, or anybody who couldn't buy it, was no better off. One other event that happened was on the reintroduction of community goals. One of the first ones was to create some upgrading stations, in the hope that providing more large landing facilities would mean that people could fuel up carriers quicker, and it could also increase quantities of tritium available to buy. Fundamentally, this was a good idea, and one I think all of us would support. However, unfortunately, all of the stations were in the bubble, and the bubble already has quite a vast quantity of tritium to purchase. None of the stations were in Colonia. That's when it's needed. So we come to my final comments really on this video, and it refers back to something about 7 minutes 40 seconds into this video, when I said there was a fundamental problem with the footage that was being shot behind captions I was putting up, and that problem in the video roots back to the changes made to mining during the patching process after the introduction of carriers. Now, I know there's been some things flashing up on the screen and parts of the screen have been covered, but I mined over the last couple of days where my carrier was for some painite to go back to civilization with, or a station to sell, and it was a painite hotspot, single painite hotspot, and after about 20 minutes I never hit one single asteroid that had any percentage painite in it at all. I was flabbergasted, like I said earlier on. I really didn't expect that to happen. So I thought maybe it was a bug, and I left the instance and went back in again, left the asteroid field and flew back in later on, and I still couldn't find any tritium. So I spoke about this to some of the other guys I play with, and I tried it again in some other asteroid hotspots. Some of them were metal, some of them were rock, and some of them were icy. And none of them appear to work. Not one hotspot is producing any percentage of the mineral that it says it's a hotspot for. And that can't be right. So as much as some of the patching and messing about with mining that's been going on since fleet carriers, maybe let tritium be mined again. Fundamentally, mining is still broken in the game. And as much as potentially there's a good source of mining, in the bubble, especially for pay night, which is getting people some cash, doesn't alter the fact that fundamentally mining is broken. Now, I really want to buy Odyssey. I'm looking forward to seeing Odyssey. And from some of the stuff that we've seen released and in the dev diaries, it looks fantastic. But here's the deal. The bottom line is there's been a problem with mining in the game since the first patch on Fleet Carrier's release, and Frontier as of yet haven't fixed it. This is something that needs to be sorted. We shouldn't be stuck in the one place to mine all over. We shouldn't be stuck with human systems out in Colonia which don't have any support or any facilities to mine or buy anything we need. So I really hope Frontier look at this video. I hope somebody links it to them and realises, much as the efforts are appreciated to fix mining, the problem isn't corrected. As much as it's appreciated that giving us more stations to sell it, some of them aren't in the right place. So please, please, please fix this and show us that the path to Odyssey is not going to suffer for these same pitfalls.